Actually,
We're going to have
that's close enough.
headless footage of our crotch.
All I want to do, we're going to talk about taking people down now. Yeah. I would like as a theme, because I'm all about situational awareness, try to take the person down in a bathroom stall. I would say a telephone booth, but then you know it was already like telephone what? You mean my car? Yeah. And I'm saying that because sometimes in life you have to, but here we really need to. If I just go, look how cool I am, whoa! And he goes and he kicks Rosa in the face and takes out fucking, Joey's knee. Was that a good throw? Right, I just killed my client that I was protecting. It's not good, right? So this is the first thing we're looking at. At first, we're going to do the slowest dance ever. I like to hum Careless Whisper by Wham when I think it makes it more intimate. I want to just feel his ball. So wherever I'm moving, I'm looking to feel his ball. What am I looking to feel? This is the basis of structure. We are two-legged creatures. We are never perfectly balanced. We would need a third point, a tripod, in order to be balanced. So anytime we get affected, we try to compensate, and if we violate our two stance, we're always looking for that third point of support. We're stepping where that point would give us support. Does that make sense? He has a base, which is constructed of his feet. So it's like a little oval. And his balance is dependent on his center, whatever you want to call it, his center being balanced over this. It's far easier to show when JB is naked. So if I push his center towards the limit, the perimeter, the wall of his base, he, at some point, as soon as it goes to pass, he either takes a step, or he takes a step, or he takes a step. That's his only choice. You take a step or you fall. If I push back, he takes a step. So literally, if my base is this big, there is my balance perimeter. If my balance goes past that, I am obliged to take a step. So what is the essence of breaking structure? It is interrupting the recalibration of his balance. I got to do something before I take a step. If I do this, too late. And that's what everybody does.
Kevin, this is Kevin Secours. I'm enjoying a really cool workshop with Kevin and Alex that goes on for about 4 days. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the fourth day, but making the most out of all three that I can actually be here for. So, Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a Montreal-based martial arts instructor. My primary disciplines are Japanese Jiujitsu and Russian Systema. And I've worked as well quite extensively in security, starting off in bar security as a bouncer and a doorman, and then working in private security, and then ultimately in bodyguarding.
Great, and thank you very much, Kevin. So based on the work that we've done over the last 2.5, 3 days, one of the things that's that I find really interesting is how you basically structure things based on your experience in real life defense of self or defense of others, right?
Yes.
So this is one of the things that one of my pet peeves, in that I think that most people who teach martial arts or learn martial arts have this false sense of the ability to defend themselves or defend others.
Yes.
So can you share some thoughts on that in terms of how they can do better in that area?
Yeah. First I started like many people. When I was 10, I got jumped by 4 older guys. I got badly beaten up.
Mm-hmm.
So I went, in all honesty, my early training was about finding those guys and beating them up, even though it was never going to happen. I was angry. I certainly didn't want the same thing to happen again. Realistically, I still work in the field, and there's still a vestige of that, right? There's still part of you so we were speaking about this the other day, is that the thing we hate most in the world is bullies, right? Bullies drive me crazy. Yet in the martial arts, you have a lot of people that have the same history. They open a school, they're teaching, and they don't realize it, but then they create a bully environment, right? So I think you look at the mat, we really try to have an inclusive, everybody's welcome kind of environment. So I would say first, make sure that you're not, even if you've been taught ritualized hazing, even if you've been taught, selective student elimination, anytime you say that person's not good enough for the training, is that the case, or are we lacking as a teacher, right? So I early in my career, I started to realize that maybe the school wasn't the environment I wanted to be.
Right.
And people often email me and say, well, should I do Systema? Or I'm trying to find Jiu-Jitsu, or I went to a sport club and it's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I always say, create the environment you want to have. And if you're not able to kind of engineer the environment that you're going into, then maybe it's time that you're better off training half-assedly, quarter-assedly with a good friend where you're not going to get hurt and you're going to learn,
Yep.
than it is to go into an environment where you feel bullied, where you're internalizing negative things.
Yeah.
So number one, don't be a bully environment. The second thing, and I know you do this as well, is sometimes like we love the tradition, we
Yeah.
love the story, but for us it's not an impediment, but yet somebody else is attaching to the wrong thing, the chi, the energy, the complex language, the metaphysical. So I always try to make it accessible. So because I teach a lot of military and police, I go to academic research, sports performance, psychology, motor behavior, and I use that usually as my first entry point.
Right.
It's not to say I'm not.
Yeah. So it's not completely alien to them.
Exactly. I give them research, I give them provable, something quantifiable, and then I slowly move to whatever degree of mindful, esoteric, intuitiveness, organic play that they can handle, and find that a little bit more. That'll at least allows me to access people that would be otherwise forgotten.
Otherwise, completely.
And then you get an interesting crossroads, because with police and law enforcement, sometimes because they have little budgets, short amount of time, and good intentions, they don't get what they need fast enough or clear enough. The lack of clarity leads to incongruence in the skill. It allows fear to exist. They get into a real situation. They become a bully. And so then both environments overlap. So make sure your dojo is bully-free. Police it if you have to, for lack of a better term. Encourage and cultivate the people that need it the most. That's I always say, people say, aren't you afraid of a psychopath learning your material? I definitely am. The good thing is psychopaths rarely do push-ups, right? They come in, their partners don't want to train with them, they get kind of subdivided. That I'm okay with, right? That kind of selective breeding in the dojo. What I'm not okay if somebody comes in who's been hurt by the world and they need help, and then they feel abandoned. This I'm not good with. So I think those are important things. And I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I don't claim to be some super moral or good human. Have some degree of skill, but I have had a high degree of luck. I've had far better teachers have worse fates, and far better tactical partners have terrible fates because they were bad luck, unlucky. So I try to learn from each of them, and I think it's like karmic. I try to pay it forward now more than ever. I'm thankful for the good teachers I've had, and I feel an obligation to share it with the people that need it. And that's really the biggest drive for me.
Fair enough. And thank you for that. And in terms of like using these things in a realistic environment, what advice do you have for people to go from ritualistic, pattern oriented, then be kind of training, to be able to actually use it in real life?
Three things I've said at the seminar to some degree is, number one, do your own thing. So I always give the example, like if you're a pro fighter and you're Jiujitsu or MMA or Muay Thai or whatever, I get that you might look at an Aikido guy and you want to make fun of him, whatever, but if you're so secure in what you're doing, why are you wasting time mocking?
That's
right? If I have an Aikido guy, and I'm saying Aikido because people pick on it, and he's been to war, as the founder was, and he had some PTSD, as the founder might have had, and he decides, I've had enough violence, man. I want everything to be circular and harmonious, right? Who am I to judge? If that's how he functionalizes. Somebody else has PTSD or is exposed to violence, and they're like, I got to make training as close to it as possible, and I want to relive that environment every day, and I want to constantly stay in a perpetual state of hypervigilance. If that's good for you, that's good for you. You will spread to your students what you're creating, right? So then your students are all going to start to be very aggressive. The Aikido students risk drifting off if they've never had real combat experience. There's that risk. But if that's what's comfortable for you, like the example I gave, if I'm a HEMA guy and I want to wear armor and sword fight on the mountain on a Saturday, good for you. If I want to use my broadsword for home defense, I better train it in my house. I better modify my technique if I don't have armor and a shield and, whatever. That's fine. If that's your entry point, who am I to say that a short sword or a baseball bat is better for home defense than a broadsword? If that's what's making you comfortable. It's an existential crisis that we're all living. Combat is therapeutic for us. You need to find, in Brandon Lee's words, the level of lie and deception that you're comfortable with, because there's no way that you can fully emulate combat anyway. So whatever's making you happy, do it. And if the guy next to you disagree with it, just Yang Zhuangming, the Qina master, famously said, when I was at a seminar in the 90s, when he came to the country, everybody seemed more impressive. Everybody was competing with him. And his father's words were, when you're planting rice, keep your head down and finish the line. And he said, so I remember what I learned back home. I kept my head down, I finished the line. He said, when my legs got sore and my back got tired and I stood up, none of them were left in the field, right? So just do your own thing, live long, be healthy, protect what you love and value. And I think that would be the most important takeaway.
Cool. Thank you very much. And one more last question. Sorry.
Of course.
So the last question was about like basically the psychological aspect of it. Like a lot of the times we tend to think of these encounters from a self-defense perspective as mechanical, but there's a lot more of a psychological component to it and a behavioral component to it.
Yes.
So how do you basically advise people to approach that and get comfortable with it and become familiar with it?
Yeah. So I think the psychological, the emotional, even if you want to call it the spiritual, I think it's the biggest part. I recently wrote a book called Safe School, which was on school safety, and really my niche, because I was teaching a lot on high schools for kids, and then you always have a bit of spillover, and a teacher says, hey, is it crazy, but can you teach us? And then of course it always happens, right? So then you teach the teachers, but then they come in, they want to do one lesson, then maybe not that fit, or they're not that comfortable with violence. So then it begets the question, what can I teach them in an hour? So I tell them, I can't make you into some master martial artist, but if I can get rid of one bad habit, and if I can give you one simple thing that you can do that's going to make you safer, amazing. And because I was a teacher, academically trained to be a school teacher, I looked at crossover, and there was a lot of crossover in classroom management, what's called alpha and beta commands. In what a police officer would call command presence, they might call delivery or whatever. So I looked for things that were tactically sound that also made them better teachers, better communicators, better able to manage the class. And then when I was writing the book, I said, okay, so they're going to think you've dumbed it down for us. So I went out to my buddies that were SWAT guys and special forces guys and elite bodyguards. And I said, just what's the most important thing you would tell a teacher? And without giving them anything more than that, they all gave me stories. And every single story was about command presence, language, the mindset, vision, how to use it. Not one was use this secret hit, you'll drop a guy. Not one guy that survived violence gave me a combat technique, even for special forces, And Pete Jensen, who's a lieutenant colonel, and he was directed like a performance institute for special forces across the U.S., he recounted a story he got from one of his trainers. And the trainer would say to a group of special forces candidates, how many of you have been in a fight? And they'd put up their hands. And how many fights? 10, 5, whatever. Okay, well, how many of you in this room have had an hour of full-time real-life violence, including war? And the hands went down. 45 minutes? 30, and then you realize that, oh man, I've done 150 interventions. Did they all take even a minute? Some took 20 seconds. So then the guy in the room that's the veteran, maybe he's had 16 minutes of real-life fighting experience. Those 16 minutes are life-altering. Somebody with 2 fights, those 2 fights completely change the direction of your life, right? But what would they tell you if they could go back? Hit sooner, detect, avoid, how to stand, how to look. So my advice would be psychology starts with commanding your environment, controlling your distance. Anything that triggers your intuition, which is a primordial alarm system, is educating your body. If I suppress it and I ignore it, I'm suppressing my biology. I'm suppressing my destiny.
Millions of years of evolution.
Exactly. Cells firing, telling me this killed all your ancestors. This guy got eaten by a tiger, But the minute I start to acknowledge it, I start to grow my assertiveness. I start to grow my awareness, and I start to improve my psychological health. So I would say trust your gut, trust your instinct. That's why teenagers are so particularly prone, because they're at an age of huge development. So we naturally impose the greatest limits on it. Don't do. And then they learn to repress their instincts. So to teach them to trust their gut while respecting authority, careful balance, because the predator is going to use authority to victimize them. Right? So it's a delicate balance, but I want to create psychologically healthy people. Psychologically and emotionally healthy people are going to be more assertive. They're going to trust themselves. They're going to be more insulated. They're going to feel less alienated. They're going to be less prone to violence. They're going to be more able to communicate with others, band together. And that's ultimately how humans have stayed strong, right? How did a naked ape survive a great animal? Metacognitive understanding. We created weapons, but ultimately we got together, right? We got together and we survived. And that's the only reason we're here. Now we've ironically become our greatest opponent, and we're predatory, right? So I would just say psychology starts that simply by trusting your gut, and then thinking, what would a predator want, and how can I avoid it? How can I avoid looking weak? How can I avoid being distracted? Put the phone down, walk in groups, anything that makes me a hard target makes me healthier. those simple fixes, which I go into at depth, but those simple fixes are far more achievable for anyone. Like if I have to teach somebody in a wheelchair who's literally steering by breath, what physical technique can I teach that? I can teach you how to roll on a foot, and I can teach them. But if you don't have that mobility, what can I do? I can teach you how to reframe your environment, increase your awareness, and reduce your risk. This is learnable. So those are the key things.
Great. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Cheers.
I can do anything. If I twist it, what's his baseline do? Where's his max, right? Look at his center. Everybody focuses on taking the head pass, but the head is a counter lever for his hips. Look at his hips. Look at his hips. Prodigious hips moving forward. And he's locked. And that's why the pussy goes down. Because when I move the head back, the hips go forward outside of base and you lose the structure. Everything you are doing to engage the ground is you are volunteering to find stability with your center within your hips. So that's it.
Listen to me now.